and want to welcome everybody to the Paranormal View right here on the ParaX Radio Network. Want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan, Tabby Cat, Jeffrey Gould, and I want you to go ahead and just introduce our guests for us tonight.
Yep, well, tonight's guests are Andi and Jonathan Goldman, director of the Sound Healers Association and president of Spirit Music Incorporated in Boulder, Colorado. Multiple book author Jonathan Goldman is an international authority on sound healing and a pioneer in the field of harmonics. He's dedicated his life to the path of service, helping awaken and empower others with the ability of sound to heal and transform. Musician, healer, director of Healing Sound Seminars, and the co-director of Sound Healers Association, along with husband Jonathan, is Andi Goldman, who's a licensed psychotherapist specializing in holistic counseling and, obviously, sound therapy. Andi also co-authored Jonathan's book, Chakra Frequency. So welcome, Andi and Jonathan Goldman.
Due to an audio glitch, we missed a little bit of the show, but we now return you to our show with Jonathan and Andi Goldman.
Your story first, and then I'll tell how I connected with all that.
So my story begins 40 plus years ago now. I'm playing in a club, a bar, a seaside bar in Marshfield, Massachusetts, which is on Cape Cod. And it's Saturday night, and we come in from a break, and I strap on my Fender Stratocaster, plug in with the rest of the band, start playing, and I look out at the audience, and I realize that the ambiance of the club is one of negativity and violence, which is, had to do with the alcohol and the different intoxicants that people were imbibing in, but also I acknowledge that the music that I was creating at that time was kind of dark music, and I realized that the music that I was creating was helping induce this ambiance. Now, I had been performing professionally for about 15 years before that, because I was, I've been a musician for quite a while, and it's just I'd never had that thought before. It was like the light of God struck me that night on stage, and I had the thought, what if music can be used to make people feel good? Just that simple thought. And, within a week, that thought shifted and changed and became, what if sound can be used to heal? And from there, literally, and mind you, this is back in about 1979 or so, there was virtually maybe a half a dozen different recordings of sound healing, and perhaps a few different books from different people, different sages, etc. And I was handed if you like, a workshop flyer on a workshop on hearing the sound and color with a friend of mine named Sarah Benson, and I had this experience where I was placed in the middle of the circle. I was holding a crystal. People chanted my name. I went out of my body. I basically was put into this amethyst pyramid in the wood. When I came out, I basically thought, I have to find out more about sound, and I have to find out more about crystals, both of which I have over years. And in fact, the woman who's teaching the course, Sarah Benson, then invited me to a group of people that were having a meeting who were interested in using sound for healing. It was my first meeting. I said, this is great. It was really cool. And I said, when's the next meeting? This is the last meeting. And I said, well, I'm taking this over, and I'm going to basically run this. And I had the, if you like, the gall to do that, the new kid on the block. And I basically, the first thing that I did was gave it a name, because in a lot of the mystical traditions, if you name something, you give it life. And so I called it the Sound Healers Association. And that woman, Sarah Benson, who is no longer on the planet, she, like Ted, is operating up the angelic realms, but she just one of my books is actually dedicated to her. We call her the Divine Mother of Sound Healing. And she was just the greatest mentor to myself and my beloved wife, Andi. And from there, starting the Sound Healers Association, then I got a degree from Lesley University, a master's degree. I already had a bachelor's degree from Boston University, and then my first book came out with Element Books called Healing Sounds, and then that went into Inner Traditions, who published it. And believe it or not, we are now going to be working on a new release of the 30th anniversary of Healing Sounds next year. And that's just the beginning. Andi, how did you?
Well, my story's a little bit different. Jonathan and I have been now together working and playing and just doing life together for over 25 years. And my background is as a holistic psychotherapist. And I did a lot with expressive therapies. And I met Jonathan back in, 1994, 95. And we just had a beautiful resonance together. And of course, sound was something that was very interesting to me. And I wanted to delve more deeply into that whole field. And so what better teacher could I possibly had than my husband, Jonathan Goldman?
And Andi, can you still hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure. Well, thank you, Andi. I had one of these newfound things on the picture and want to make sure that everything was copacetic. Okay, so bottom line is that Andi is too humble, because I may, to a degree, a teacher of hers, but she's been studying esoterica for probably 20 years before that, and she actually founded the, she's actually, a lot of people consider him one of the great godfathers of sound healing, and Andi is actually the godmother of what they call coaching, because she basically started, as far as we know, the world's first telephone counseling service back in the early 90s called Telecounsel. And she would then lead seminars and teach other people how to basically deal with inbound clients who could only talk to her over the phone. And I have to tell you, in order to therapeutic healing over the phone, that means you're using the ability of your voice and your ear to listen and do healing. And you can probably tell from her, the sound of her voice, but she's just got one of the most sweetest, loving voices in existence, doesn't she?
Jonathan's my best cheerleader here. Anyway, thank you for all that too, Jonathan. So we've been, working together, and of course, with my background as a psychotherapist and Jonathan's pioneering work with sound, we talked many, many years ago about how we could begin to sort of incorporate our work together and teach together, and we have subsequently written books together and have literally taught seminars all over the world together, and here we are now in 2021.
I think, I'm just thinking, our greatest accomplishment may have been to teach the first ever sound healing seminar at the Royal College of Music in London. I mean, we did a lot of different things, but that was there along with, some amazing people. I think even Isaac Newton may have been there. I don't know.
Incredible.
A little bit of background.
It just amazes me that nobody had thought of this before. We've all heard that music does have a profound impact on our mood, but also our spiritual placement too. Music does tame the savage beast, and don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think the actual quote of that one, believe it or not, is music tames the savage breast, but because
I was just saying, I was about to say that.
Yeah, but yes, for sure. The whole idea is that okay, as a reality, we have music as a healing modality, and we want to talk about that. But then we have sound as a healing modality, and we kind of differentiate the two, because oftentimes music is, what you listen to, whether it's the Beatles or Bach or whatnot, but it's really formalized, particular sounds. With sound therapy, we usually oftentimes talk about usually either single tones or like your bowls or bells, etc. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to jump in and just give you a major delineation for two ways that sound can heal, okay? The first is called psychoacoustics. That means the sound goes into your ear, into your brain, affects your nervous system, your heart rate, your respiration, your brain waves. And this is what happens when we listen to music. This is what happens when people talk to us. This is what happens when we hear any sort of sounds, and we'll talk more about that as we go on, how different types of sounds have different either positive or detrimental effects depending upon what we need. So that's one way that sound works, and music works. Okay, you got that? Mm-hmm. Now the other one is called vibroacoustics. And that's where the sound, or it can be music, but it can be the sound mostly, goes into your body, affecting you on a cellular level and even affecting you down to your DNA. And that's really where a lot of times the mojo and the magic happens in terms of creating a healing response. Because the basic idea of using sound for healing is simply this. Everything in the universe is in a state of vibration, from the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around their suns. They're all in a state of vibration, and conceptually this can be perceived of as being a sound. And now listen, when we hear from around what's called cycles per second, around 16 cycles a second to around 16,000. But our friends in the ocean, the dolphins, can make sounds and receive sounds upwards of 180,000 cycles a second, more than 10 times our greatest level of hearing. So just because we can't hear something doesn't mean that there isn't being a sound being created.
Correct.
So so therefore, indeed, our ancient mystics and our modern physicists are in agreement everything is in a state of vibration. This includes our body. Every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body is in a state of vibration. And when we're in a state of health, we say we're in
sound health.
We're like this incredible orchestra that is playing the symphony of the self, the suite of the self. But what happens if the second violin player loses their sheet music? They begin to play out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon, the rest of the string players go out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon, the entire orchestra sounds off. So this is like akin to a part of the body vibrating out of its normal, healthy, resonant frequency. It's vibrating out of ease, out of harmony. We say it's diseased. But what if we can somehow give the string player back their sheet music and create the correct resonant frequency for that part of the body and put it back into a state of health? It's a very simple concept, but it's very, very important, and it's actually the basis of most vibrational therapies, which include chiropractic, acupuncture, light therapy, and more. So believe it or not, that concept is the basis for all the different vibrational therapies.
Well, that makes total sense. Even if you're a student of other esoteric groups such as the Kabbalah, which, the Tree of Life, each has its own distinct sound to it. And that makes complete sense because you have a chant that you use to clear that specific part of the Kabbalistic tree. So, I'm completely on board with this.
It's so interesting that you're mentioning that, because the award that I just won now about an hour ago for music was music for a recording called The Divine Name. And The Divine Name, which I'm not going to go into at this moment, but it is nothing more or less than a rediscovery of what could be perceived of as the Tetragrammaton. And if you are a student of Kabbalah, you know that the Tetragrammaton is the four-letter name of God, whose pronunciation and sounding got lost. And I well may have, rediscovered it about 20 years ago. Anyway, but I'm jumping, but yeah, I just, you mentioned Kabbalah. Yeah, let's talk about Kabbalah. Let's talk about angels. Okay.
But, Kat, it's interesting because, the way that Jonathan just framed all of that, was beautiful. And there are so many instrumentation type of machines and sound chairs and all kinds of things that can actually, crystal bowls and Tibetan bowls can, help people put their frequencies, into a place of healing, into a place of harmony. But the way that Jonathan and I primarily work is really through the instrument of our own voices. And within each of us, each human being, we have this marvelous, marvelous instrument that we are able to utilize to help ourselves reduce stress, help ourselves bring into balance and heal our own bodies. And using our voice is just such a beautiful tool. And so what we try to do is bring that awareness to people. That is one powerful way that people can use sound right now in this very moment. You don't have to have a crystal bowl, a sound bed, a Tibetan bowl, tuning forks, all of that, which those are all wonderful, but our own voice is just such a blessing.
So you're using it as an evocation in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, even more. How about this one? You ready for this? And I love this. Hope you don't mind our going on and teaching.
No,
but what's the extraordinary thing, a phenomena of sound? There's something called entrainment. Okay, and this is actually discovered.
Oh my goodness! Back in the 16th century, by a Dutch physicist by the name of Christian Huygens.
Right.
And
so didn't he discover the rings around Saturn
or
something like that?
He absolutely did. And he also developed and invented the grandfather clock.
The pendulum clock, right. And so one day he was in his, I don't know if you call it a laboratory or workplace, but he had all these grandfather clocks on the wall, and they were, basically moving pell-mell, and he walked out, and he came in the next day, and they were all locked in step with the most powerful grandfather clock, and he realized that they'd all entrained together. And this idea of entrainment is the fact that the powerful rhythmic vibrations of one object can cause less powerful rhythmic vibrations of another object to synchronize and lock in step. Now, this is mandatory, and it's really important because our heart rate, our respiration, our brain waves, all our bodily rhythms, our brain waves, they all entrain, first of all, with ourselves. We take a nice deep breath. For example, I'm going to do that right now. And through myself, I was able to just slow down my heart rate for a minute and my brain waves. But also, you listening to me will probably felt that as well, because we entrain our nervous systems and train with each other all the time.
And the neat thing about sound is that we can use sound to affect our heart rate, our brain waves, etc. And through our own voice, we can, for instance, if we even tone an elongated vowel sound, that is going to affect many parts of our physical body.
And just want to say that when I was talking about the idea that when we talk about using our voice, we're not talking about getting up and singing Strangers in the Night in a club or whatever it is that you're doing. That's entertainment. That's wonderful. And that can be, very healing, if you like. But we're talking about entrainment, using your voice to entrain, either entraining yourself and changing your own neuroanatomy, or using it to assist and change other people. And this is something everybody can do. Now, a lot of people go, unfortunately, because of the popularity of a lot of shows on television, American Idol or, The Voice or whatnot, people have gotten, and they've always been, but even more so than ever, they've gotten just so judgmental about somebody being in tune, somebody being, quote, pitchy, somebody having a good voice. So you suggest to them, hey, we want you to use your voice, to make a sound and like vibrate a part of your body. They're not going to do it. And this is one of the things we've been teaching together for 25 years, and we would oftentimes find just all this extraordinary discomfort from people when we said, hey, you've taken this weekend workshop with us. Have you been doing this work on a daily basis? No. Why not? Well, I can't really sing. Oh, my goodness gracious. So we said to each other, okay, this work with sound is incredibly powerful and incredibly important. But we need to make it inclusive of everyone, as opposed to being exclusive. We don't want people to think that you have to have music lessons or being an opera singer or something like that in order to use sound for healing. So we said, okay, what is the one sound that everyone can make that they will not be judgmental about? We looked at each other and we went, We realized that it was the hum.
And interestingly, humming is, you first hear that, and, you think, right, humming, that's going to be healing. That's a way to work with sound as a healing modality. And the truth is, it actually is, because what happens when we begin to hum is that it's almost like we're giving ourselves an internal massage, and it's like we are filling up our bodies in the vibroacoustic way that Jonathan was talking about earlier. And so we are able to, with our own voice, through something as simple and effective as humming, be able to shift and change the levels of our stress, to bring balance into our bodies, etc. But it was interesting because when we decided to write our book, which we did on humming,
the humming effect,
but it was interesting because we've worked with so many different sounds, so many mantras, so many exercises with toning and vowel sounds, and on and on and on. And so when we had made the decision to focus on humming, we thought that would be hopefully an entryway to bring more people out in the world into the realm of sound and sound healing. And so it was a kind of what we did it so that we could be more inclusive rather than exclusive. And we didn't want to continuously work with sounds that people would be judging themselves for. And we know that we've never heard anyone say, I am just not a very good hummer.
Did you ever hear of Dr. John Lilly?
Dr. John
No.
Lilly.
So John Lilly was this, when I met him, he was in his 80s. We were at a party together in Hollywood. We were both actually in town to teach, but he is the guy that he was a medical doctor, and there were he actually is the go-to person when you want to talk about consciousness, and particularly consciousness and dolphins. And in fact, I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Altered States, or the movie Day of the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Altered States, you bet. Yeah.
They were both based on him and his work.
Wow.
So I'm sitting on the veranda outside the lanai, so to speak, and there's this big party going on. I needed some space, and he's there with me, and he's sitting there, and he's humming. And I'm sitting there just chilling, and he's humming. And I said, "Excuse me, John, are you doing that consciously?" Because I really kind of got what he was doing, that he was actually entraining his nervous system and changing all sorts of things with the hum. Because this is about 15 years or 20 years before, we even wrote The Humming Effect. But that was my first realization that there was something really important going on. Now, here's a guy who has dedicated his life to consciousness, and I asked him the wrong question. He looked at me, and I said, "Young man," which I was at the time. And he said, "Young man," he said, "I no longer know what consciousness is." And he then proceeded to give me a half-hour lecture on all sorts of amazing, esoteric, paranormal experiences, but he never did answer my question. I said, "Thank you, John," and I went back inside. But I thought, this guy knows something about humming. And by gosh and by golly, when we finally wrote this book, we began to investigate and scrape away different levels of the ability of sound, and particularly the ability of humming to shift and change our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. We didn't have a clue. And we have to tell you that right now, the hum is our favorite sound. You mentioned Kabbalah. Well, I mentioned the divine name, which is a harmonically related series of vowel sounds that may be a hotline to the divine, and it's wonderful. But I'm going to say that the hum is pretty incredible. Here's something I just came across a few days ago. I was reading something called the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali's, the book is probably 3,000 or 4,000 years old. It's the basis of all yoga. And in it, it says basically, the original sound of creation was the humming of energy, pranava. They had to give this humming a name, so they called it Om. So believe it or not, the Om, which is found as a sacred sound in tens of thousands of places throughout the planet, comes from the hum.
Nice. What I love about the idea of humming, too, is that even those with varying degrees of hearing impairment can hum.
Absolutely. What a beautiful segue into the fact that last night, Jonathan and I watched a fabulous movie called The Sound of Metal, and it was about a drummer who, a young man, probably in his 20s, and he one night was playing and he absolutely went completely deaf. And so the whole movie was around his journey of dealing with not being able to hear. And it really made us appreciate so much our ability to listen to sounds, to make sounds, and to hear. And when, someone does have a hard time hearing, the vibration of humming can be very powerful for them.
Right. Once again, saying that it is the single most powerful psychoacoustic sound that you make. Because when you hum, you have to have your lips closed. And because of that, the sound is not escaping through your mouth, and it's therefore a totally inwardly resonant, vibrating sonic experience. Now, I can't see you, but would you play a game with me?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, you ready, kids? Now, the only part of the game is, and everybody who's going to be listening to this, now or ever, I want you to do the same thing, because, you got to experience this. When you hum, the only thing you got to do is keep your lips closed. That's the only thing you got to do. If I open my lips, then that's not a hum. Got that?
So Cal
Right?
can't hum.
Okay. Now, I want you to start humming, and then I want you to pinch your nostrils, okay? And I want to tell me what happens. I'm waiting for you, kids.
Start humming.
Nothing will come out.
Nothing will come out exactly. You can't hum if your nose is closed. And I say, okay, you didn't know that before, did you?
Nope,
Yeah,
never
I
thought
did.
of it.
Oh, well, all right, and you're a highly advanced master of sound, because 99% of the people that we know don't know that, even ones that have been working with sound. I say, okay, if you don't know that about the hum, do you think perhaps there are other things that you might not know as well? Anybody on that side of the screen who didn't know that?
Everybody, I think, is, yeah.
Yeah,
Nobody's
nobody's saying
Tell me.
anything. They're just quiet.
I think they're all trying it right now.
When I was in college, I, as an actor, I took a course on voice and diction, and one of the things our teachers, Dr. McCarthy, said was the three sounds that only go through the nose are in, and ing, as in sing. And he jokingly said, when he said sing, and he said Ming, and then out of nowhere he said, "Who was Ming?" And I raised my hand. He says, "Yeah." I said, "Charles Middleton." He says, "From what?" I say, "Well, from the original Flash Gordon serials." And he goes, "Which one?" I said, "Well, he was Ming in all three of the serials." And he jokingly said, "You're bluffing." And I'm like, "I know my serials. I used to watch all of them on Saturday morning TV when they aired them." And during my college years, he referred to me as Ming.
That's great. Flash Gordon, by gosh and by golly.
Yeah, the old Buster Crabs.
Indeed. Believe it or not, I just saw, talking about the old serials, they have now got the Captain Marvelous Shazam running on, I think, either Netflix or whatnot. And I have never seen them. They hold up pretty well for being about 80 years old. Amazing. That's, of course, the basis. Those things were the basis that George Lucas got a lot of his tunes from.
Originally, until Star Wars went off the rails. But the one thing about the original Flash Gordons I like, especially the second one, Trip to Mars, was the use of Franz Liszt's Preludes, which was also used a lot in the old radio show of the Lone Ranger, which our radio PBS used to play. And I used to listen to the old, Franz Stryker, Clayton Moore. Brace Beamer was the voice of the Lone Ranger on the radio.
I'm with you on that one. Keep going. If you want to talk old-time radio, I'm a big fan. Including, believe it or not, the Superman radio series with Bud Collyer as Superman, Clark Kent.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, we had a radio station that at 5 p.m. each day had their own show. You had Gangbusters, the original The Shadow, the Lone Ranger, obviously. Off the top of my head, I think Green Hornet, but I can't remember precisely what the other two were. But I used to listen to those. They were great.
Now, wait a minute. You can't have listened to them originally because you've got to be like 150 years old.
No, late 60s, early 70s. And they used to play the old shows that had aired back in the 30s and 40s.
Okay, thank you. All right, cool. All right,
Mickey and Molly, that was one of them.
I thought you were listening, in the 30s, and I thought, my goodness gracious, that would put you at...
I'm not that old.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately.
But getting back to the little game that Jonathan just had asked you guys to play, and a lot of people don't know that pinch your nose and there's no hum that can come. And so what else about humming don't we know? And when we were getting our thoughts together and doing our research, etc., we knew that in order for people to take humming seriously, that we really needed to, the first chapter is nothing but peer-reviewed research. And you would be so amazed at what happens when we are humming, when we are using our own voice in that capacity. Our blood pressure is lowered. Our heart rate is lowered. Melatonin is released. And also the hormone oxytocin, which is the trust hormone. This is just a few of the things that happen physiologically when we are humming. And of course, the most important, one of them, and they're all actually important, but nitric oxide is also, it's a molecule, and it's Jonathan's favorite story to tell, the molecule of the year story.
Well, yeah,
tell him what nitric oxide is.
So nitric oxide is now getting, I see a lot of ads for different type of substances that will increase nitric oxide, and they're really realizing how important nitric oxide, which is not nitrous oxide, which is wonderful when you're in the dentist's office. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, which means basically that it makes more fluid and elastic your circulatory system so things flow better. That's one of the things that it does, and it's really important. So it's really useful for, oh my goodness, all sorts of phenomena in terms of heart stuff, in terms of circulation stuff, but it's also, get this, it is also an antiviral agent. So that if you hum, and as you nasally hum with a sound, what happens is you get the release of nitric oxide, and this is once again scientifically proven, and to basically people with sinusitis and all sorts of other problems can really heal themselves of that as effectively, it seems to be, as if they're using traditional pharmaceuticals. And, I've gotten all sorts of email from people and validations from people and doctors to say, yeah, we recommend that you hum if you have any sort of, shall we say, imbalance in your nasal cavity. And, of course, there are a lot of these, shall we say, viruses that first encode themselves in the nasal cavity before they work themselves into other places. And so humming may be a great therapeutic tool on that level.
Wow. Now,
I didn't make that up. That's real. You can look that up. You can go to and the website, we have a blog there, but it's really well known. This is not, how do you say, this is totally 100% peer-reviewed stuff. I don't state facts that are not true, sir.
So what kind of things can sound actually heal?
Okay, it's a great question. I'm going to give you a quote, and you have to first guess where the quote comes from. Did it come from UFO Daily, National Enquirer, or the New York Times? You ready?
Okay.
Sound shaped into dazzling object. Sound shaped into dazzling new tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure and levitate objects. Let me give it to you again. Sound shaped into dazzling tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure and levitate objects. Where did that come from?
Oh, that's the Times.
That's the New York Times.
Yes, you got it.
February 8th, 1988. So we're talking about an energy, a power. It's got the ability to rearrange molecular structure. So you say, what sort of conditions can sound be used to heal? And, we can talk about, and I will, talk about using sound for relaxation, sound for stress reduction, sound to enhance sleep. And these are all incredible, sounds to enhance your immune system. But I just want to suggest that if you can rearrange molecular structure, what sort of conditions conceptually cannot be changed and shifted and potentially healed? Are you familiar with the work of Royal Rife?
Bill Rice?
Royal Rife. He was a scientist who back in the 1920s began to work with frequencies, and he found that he had particular sets of frequencies that could be used to basically shatter. You know how you can shatter glass with sound? Well, you could shatter viruses and bacteria with sound. This is back in the 1920s. And now they're doing that. There's a fellow by the name of Anthony Holland, a professor out of Skidmore, who's been doing research with these different scientists, and they're working with ultrasonic frequencies to shatter cancer cells. Same thing. There's another fellow who is using ultrasound to basically clear embolisms in the brain and take care of people with Parkinson's and stuff like that. So this is really high-level stuff. It's experimental, and it's on a level of the medicine of the future. But just imagine, instead of having an invasive surgery where they have to cut open the brain, they put somebody in an MRI, they focus in this ultrasound thing, and 30 seconds later, they zap this, blockage in the brain. This is researched, and this is true. You can check this stuff out. It's amazing.
So does it...
a Rife machine, or is that something else?
Oh, there's something called a sonic laser knife.
Right.
Yeah.
And that I don't believe is any longer in existence.
No, it isn't. But it's the Rife machine. Okay, so if you know about the Rife machine, you know about Royal Rife, and there are a number of these different type of sound machines. One of my great teachers was a man by the name of Peter Guy Manners, who created this cymatic instrument. They used a composite of 5 different frequencies for any one condition. And he would have, over 500 of these different commutations, he called it, composite frequencies. And this brings me to the idea that I want to share with you, which is that there are 2 basic ways of using sound for healing. One is constructive, where you use the sound to resonate, to help make healthy some part of the body that was imbalanced and out of tune. And the other is destructive, where you use the sound to literally destroy the vibrations of whatever intruder is attacking the body. So there's constructive and destructive uses of sound. And these have very different approaches, but they both use sound very similarly. Is this making sense?
Oh, yeah.
And so how can sound be used to heal? So there's just so much out there now. In fact, more and more what we're discovering is that sound is being it's more out in the mainstream.
It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Using sound as a therapeutic thing.
And the way that we discovered what John was sharing with the ultrasound that's used to just very laser sharply go into certain parts of the brain to just, to dissolve or destroy embolisms and help people with Parkinson's. that was actually, we happened to just see that on the nightly news on, I don't know if it was ABC or NBC or whatever, but it was actually a segment on the nightly news. And this was, 4 or 5 years ago. But we're seeing more and more uses of sound, and there are machines that incorporate different frequencies that can help people with autoimmune disease, heart disease, all kinds of things.
And also really just using our voice. With friends on the other side of the microphone, how are you doing?
All right. We're going to take a quick break. Be about 6-7 minutes, maybe 8. I want to let you know that your microphones will be live, but you won't hear any sound until you hear me talking. So if you just want to mute your microphones, you'll hear me talking when we come back on. So with that, I guess we need to go to a break. Jeff, you want to take us out for a break?
Absolutely. Well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, Tabby Cat Gash, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's wonderful guests, Andi and Jonathan Goldman. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank those listening here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
And speaking of around the world, where do we have listeners at tonight?
Henry, tonight they're coming from all over the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Spain, and Belgium.
Belgium? That's kind of a new one, isn't it?
No, they've
We've
been
had Belgium recently.
Oh, have we? Oh. Well, I guess my mind is slipping a little. Anyway, we got with us tonight Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And we want to welcome back our wonderful guests, Jonathan and Andi Goldman.
We got Tabby. Right, Tabby.
Tabby is not on right now. I don't know.
Oh, did she fall out? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know what happened.
I thought that was just me that kept getting kicked off of Skype.
She even isn't in the chat room now, so apparently she lost internet.
Oh.
So.
That's usually my department.
But anyway, I want to welcome back Jonathan and Andi. You guys with us?
We surely are, and happy to be here and back.
Well, good. I'm glad.
We got questions from the chat room already.
Oh, good.
And one of which is just...
Rough questions.
Oh, this one's a dynamite one, and one I have as well, which is, with so much noise pollution in the world, how can you cancel that out, and what effect does it have on the body?
Boy, is that a good and important question. And that also falls into the concept of not only noise pollution, but electromagnetic radiation pollution, which, we are just awash in a sea of frequencies. I'm going to first just deal with the concept of noise pollution first, because it's relevant or more relevant to the concept of sound, although there is an interrelationship between sound and electromagnetic fields. But first, let's talk about what can you do. I'm a really sound-sensitive person. I really am. Probably more so than most people. So if you must know, I have a lot of difficulty with a lot of the noise pollution that is happening around, and a lot of people seem not to be aware of it. It's the idea that somebody might, for example, be playing a radio or something at a really high volume. And if you're sound sensitive, you're really being affected by that, and that's affecting your nervous system, your heart rate, your respiration, your brain waves. It's making you stressed out. And I sometimes want to go up to people and say, hey, if I beam this flashlight in your face, that's essentially what your loud music is doing to me. And so they don't realize it. So then the thing is, what can we do? Because people don't realize the power of sound.
And there's so much noise pollution. We live in a neighborhood in Colorado, and now that it's summer and the weather is warm, we know you hear lawnmowers.
Oh my gosh!
Leaf blowers, on and on and on, and it really is quite nerve-wracking, to say the least. But I know that our listeners can really probably relate to what I'm saying, and what I do just as how can I deal with this? It's driving me nuts. How can I tune it out? I'll tell you what, I actually hum.
Yeah, right. I was going to get around to that one.
It's really interesting because it's almost like I begin to hum, and I see if I can almost match the noise with the vibration that's coming from my body, and sort of try to, in a sense, not entrain totally with it, because it's a little bit crazy. The sounds are so loud, etc. But just to be able to help my own body, mind, and spirit go into a place of relaxing with it, and can I become friends with it? What can I do? And so if I make my own sound, that I find to be a help.
That's beautiful. I was going to get around that. I'm going to go to a couple other places first before we get to the be-all and end-all, which is always, your own sound, particularly the hum. But this first reminds me of, I think one of the first times I read about something like this was probably back in around 1980 in a book by a guy named, I can't remember his name. I'm thinking Murray Schafer, but that's the guy. It might be Murray Schafer, but the book was called The Tuning of the World. And this guy began to do some interest in noise pollution. And it was predominant even then, whether it was jet planes or traffic or whatnot. And here, I'm going to just tell you something that's kind of interesting. When we hear particularly loud sounds, whether it's a siren, a plane, a lawnmower, car backfire, whatever, what happens is that it affects our autonomic nervous system, and it speeds up our heart rate, our respiration, our brain waves. It interferes with our immunological system. It interferes with our digestional process. They're not sure why this happens, but one of the theories is that when we were cave people, we'd be sleeping and we'd hear the roar of a saber-toothed tiger, and we'd be up in a tree before we even knew what was happening. Now we don't have saber-toothed tigers too much anymore, but our autonomic nervous system can't differentiate between a loud sound that is threatening, such as a gunshot, and a loud sound that isn't, such as a fire engine. So this is important for us to be aware of. I wish people would do that all the time when you're using a lawnmower and you're going by gosh, my God, what's that doing to your neighborhood? What is a leaf blower doing? I don't want to go on a rant on this, but I know too many people who feel this way. We today went to this beautiful nature preservatory. We walked there for an hour. It's a bird sanctuary. It's wonderful. And within the last couple of years, there's an airport about 5 or 6 miles away from there, private airport. And for some reason, they have changed the flight pattern so these very small planes fly over the airport with singular rapidity about every 10 or 15 minutes. And it's just outrageous because the lovely serenity of this wildlife sanctuary is being, if you like, ruined by the people who are driving these small planes that are just going by. It's outrageous. So how do you deal with that? You know, I mean, is the question. As Andy was saying, humming. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that there are 2 or 3 ways of dealing with it. Another way would be to somehow create a strange acoustic instrument that puts out of phase the frequencies that are coming at you and create silence. And that is not that advanced Star Trek an idea, but it would be prohibitively expensive. But that would be a possibility. But something else, it's called noise masking. And this is simply masking or masquerading the noise that's bothering you with some other sound. And I actually have created a number of albums that are very effective noise masking tools, where they're, for example, and sort of like an ohm sound that is very soothing and very nice, and at the same time will mask the sound of a lawnmower or something like that. It's called the Ultimate Ohm, and a number of my other recordings, and you can use stuff of your own. The only thing I would suggest is that it is very much of what they call a drone. As you know, something like that, whether it's a choral voice or an instrumental type thing. So you can use that, number 1, to mask. Number 2, earplugs. Hey, you know, I mean, they are effective, and I know people who are very sensitive to sound, and they simply will put earplugs on in order to assist the sound that is being offensive to them. And then number 3, and this is the best one, it's what Andy said, making your own sound. And if you want to sing or, you know, that's great. But if you feel strange about singing, just sit there and actually humming along with it.
And almost trying to, if you can, match it with your own sound.
Yeah.
And we have a really, really good friend who is one of our sound colleagues. And he, like Jonathan, is really a founding pioneer in the field of sound healing.
Dr. John Beaulieu.
Dr. John Beaulieu. And he was, we were talking about this, and he said, one of the things that I tell my students is, if you can, just become friends with that sound and try to think of something that is positive about that sound. Become friends with that sound. And we said, you know, John, that's really a hard thing to do. And he said, it is a hard thing to do, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But these are just suggestions that perhaps will help the caller, the listener that asked the question.
And here's one more for you. With regard to humming, there is a very advanced yogic technique called Brahmari Pranayama. Cool name, right? Ask me what it is.
Oh, what is it?
Okay, Brahmari Pranayama means humming bee breath. And literally, it's a very advanced yogic technique, and all you do is you close your eyes, you hum, and you basically close your ears, and you basically put your fingers to close your ears, and then you just hum. And it's, if you do that by yourself, it can be a really profoundly advanced, deep, meditative experience, and it can also be really effective for taking care of external, irritating, loud noises.
You can meditate while you're taking care of those irritating sounds. Because if you do Brahmari pranayama and you've got your ears, you've got your thumbs in your ears and your some fingers over your eyes and you're humming, it really is a very powerful contemplative, meditative experience. So you can get rid of the sounds out there at the same time.
Totally. And being friends with the sounds as much as you can is really cool. But once again, this is just like an idea would be, you can be so sound sensitive that when your refrigerator clicks on and it starts making a little 60 cycle a second electromagnetic sound, if you're sensitive enough, that'll be disturbing to you, unless you can transform it and turn it into the chanting of monks, the om of a chanting of monks, to transform it. Use your consciousness to transform the sound. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, very much so. One more question regarding the humming is, I'm sure you're aware of the news reports that are coming from around the world of these people who are hearing this low-level hum.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you make of that and whether or not these people should be incorporating that sound into their meditations.
That's a fascinating phenomena, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the Taos hum or the X, Y, and Z hum, but there indeed seem to be. It's what are these sounds?
Where are
they coming from? Are they naturally created? Are they some sort of
electromagnetic?
Are they from the military? It's part of a program, etc. And there are a lot of different theories, but I think that indeed one of the really cool things would be try actually and use it as a meditational tool. What an extraordinary thing. Maybe it's the earth singing. Maybe it's the electromagnetics of the earth and the voice of the earth singing.
Or it could be saying, "Oh God, what have you done to me now?"
Well, I don't know if you've ever heard the I think it's from NASA, where they put microphones out into space, and each planet has a different sound to it.
Yeah, that's not actually what you think it is, but that's okay.
Yeah.
No, because what it is, most of the time they're taking these sounds and they're feeding them through synthesizers, so they're artificially creating some more tonality and harmony than actually exists.
Sure.
It's like yesterday we were listening to this thing that is said to be the music of plants. I think that they're electromagnetic frequencies that are then being fed into a computer, and they're using an algorithm to create certain sounds and make it very harmonious. But for a while, I don't know if you ever heard of the cricket choir, but this was a crazy thing. And it was said that these someone recorded crickets and then basically slowed them down. And it sounds like a Gregorian choir, and it's gorgeous. But I had the experience of taking crickets and slowing them down, and it didn't happen. So I knew that this person messed with the audio to create this, but he was saying it was a natural phenomenon. Not, but it's okay.
Have you ever been to, I think it's Luray Caverns, that have the little hammer strikes on the stalactites that create the organ-like music?
That's crazy, isn't it?
No, I don't know that one.
I've heard that. That's crazy. It's great.
But, I think, too, that when people are hearing that low humming sound, because it is very prevalent on our planet. And, we've both heard it, obviously, and so many people. And when I'm, tuned into it and it, sort of overcomes me, I actually do start humming and try to match it and try to just go into and really entrain with it on a level. And that seems to bring some level of inner peace or
right.
inner harmony
Right.
within myself, so it's not so
Right.
bothersome.
And we were talking before about Ted Andrews and like if you like the singing of trees and stuff like that. And the fact is that I think that there are some extraordinary phenomenological sounds that come from the earth and come from nature. And how cool is that? A few weeks ago I was reading that Voyager had, in fact, brought back from millions and millions and millions of miles away these electromagnetic radiation hums from these, electromagnetic clouds. And, mind you, it's much more, I think it's many, 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 many times slower and lower than anything that we could normally hear. But it would be considered an electromagnetic hum. And I was mentioning before that the Gaia tuning forks. Well, Andy, my wife Andy was mentioning to me the fact that let's talk about the resonance of the earth.
Exactly. And we created these great tuning forks called the Gaia tuning forks that actually have the frequency of it's called the Schumann resonance. It's the frequency of the earth. And certainly this is a tool that we have, that we utilize when we're ourselves with any of those sounds that are not copacetic with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And bottom line is the Schumann resonance, okay, was discovered in the 1950s by a German scientist named Otto von Schumann. And then it was basically validated in the 1960s. And the actual frequency is 7.83 cycles a second. Now, this is a frequency that for the most part is below our level of healing. Of creating this as a phenomenon, I will also say about the Schumann resonance that it is not a static tone. Because like these, I don't want to call it aura of the earth, I like to call it the Gaia matrix, the energy of the earth, but it moves and changes depending upon weather conditions and solar flares, solar winds, so it moves up and down. But 7.83 cycles a second is basically the mean or the average, and we created these tuning.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's not your
No,
fault.
that's normal. I almost thought I was being kicked off the call.
That just happens sometimes.
Yes, I would try to demonstrate these tuning forks between the two of them, just because they're very cool, and they're also, you can use them on your ears, not on your ears, but to listen to them. But you can also take the stems and you put them on your body, and it basically encodes your cells with this Schumann resonance, and which seems to be very, very effective in healing for people. I don't leave home without them, and I use them all the time. Let me see. I don't know how they're going to reproduce, though, over here. So if I hit this, for example, can you hear this? Maybe not. Maybe
I don't think
it's probably too.
I can, but I have earphones on. So.
Right.
It's probably too low for the microphones that are built in, because if we're dealing with a really subsonic frequencies, these microphones don't do it. But anyway, the Schumann resonance is one of the very cool frequencies that I like a lot. You can use it to create, there's a phenomenon called binaural beat frequencies. You put one, let's say you put one frequency in one ear, and then you put a slightly out of tune frequency in the other ear, and your brain will vibrate to the difference between these two frequencies. That's called a frequency following response. And so, for example, just if I took a tuning fork of 100 cycles a second and put it in one ear or tone, I put 105 cycles a second in the other ear, that's a 5 cycle a second difference. That'll cause your brain to begin to vibrate this 5 cycle, the predominant lobes of your brain, not the entire brain, that never happens, but the predominant lobes of the frontal lobes to vibrate there. And it seems to be, they're using this now therapeutically to induce different states of consciousness and different, for example, to help induce sleep, etc., etc. Because this is getting back now, I'm going to jump for a minute and get back to the idea of sonic entrainment and the fact that the different sounds that we hear, our nervous system goes with them. And I just don't ever want to say that any one type of music or any one type of sound is a healing sound, because it all depends on what you need at a particular moment in time and space. I, for the most part, I've got over 25 award-winning, musical recordings that are designed to reduce stress, to really chill people out, to calm them and slow their brain waves down. You can find them on everything from Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all over the place, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. And this stuff is really great if you want to relax or sleep. But I will tell you that if you're trying to do an exercise program and you get on a treadmill, you don't want to use this, because your heart rate, your respiration, your brain waves are going to entrain to the rhythms of the music. And my stuff is pulsed really slow. And because it's pulsed really slow, it really chills you out, but it doesn't help. If you're trying to run or do exercise, it doesn't work. The first time that I got on an exercise machine, I put on my stuff on headphones, and all of a sudden, I started slowing down. I couldn't keep up with the rhythm of the treadmill, and I fell off the machine. I found for myself that listening to the Rolling Stones worked really well for that type of thing. So once again, what is your purpose when you are using the music? If you're using it to stay up, if you're using it to it's different than if you're using it to chill out. Are you using it for concentration? Well, maybe classical music might be really good. Are you using it for light conversation and whatnot? Do you want to use jazz? And, we all resonate and respond differently to music. We had on our radio show a fellow who was probably one of the top neuroscientists on the planet recently, and I said, all right, what's the best thing that you can share with the audience? And he said, I'll tell you, if people are trying to find music that they can either use for relaxation or for any particular purpose, the best thing is to find music that you like yourself. He said most people find unwanted music, like unwanted sound, which is noise, but unwanted music to be extremely annoying, and the most effective thing that they can use is music that works for them. So I always say, create a musical RX for yourself, stuff that you like to listen to. One of the things, I have a book called The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing. And one of the, if you like, secrets that we have is this: we are all unique vibratory beings. We're all unique vibratory beings. And that said, meaning that no one likes the same thing. When we would do a workshop, and we did a whole lot of them, one of the first questions I would ask people is, okay, how many of you are allergic to penicillin? And anywhere from 5 to 20%, or sometimes even more than that, depending upon, of people who raise their hands and said, okay, now the idea that everything in the universe is in a state of vibration, that would include penicillin. Penicillin is frequency. And the frequencies of penicillin are for perhaps 80% of people, maybe even 95%, depending on the group. They're going to be healing, but for 5 to 20%, they're going to be toxic. And I think that's an incredible metaphor for everything. I've yet to find something that is a magic bullet and that works for everyone. That, in other words, something that some people don't have adverse reactions to. Have you ever found anything like that?
Oh, yeah. It's like pharmaceutical commercials that the first 10% are what the drug is supposed to do, and the next 90% is a dare that you'll actually take it with all the side effects.
Exactly. So the idea that, if you perceive, we're very much into, as we get more and more, I've been in this field for 40 years, so I've been seeing sound just blossoming all over the place, and it's great. But at the same time, there are all sorts of claims being made about different sounds and different frequencies. One of the reasons that I'm hesitant when people say what sort of conditions can be healed with sound is that I don't want to, specifically say, because it depends on the person and what they need and who they are. I have a formula, and I'd really love to share with you and with the listeners, and it's this. Frequency plus intent equals healing. I'm going to repeat it again. Frequency plus intent equals healing. So frequency is the sound, the actual frequency, the encodement, it's the vibrations of the sound. The intentionality is the consciousness that we encode upon the sound. And this really affects the outcome of the sound, what it's going to be doing. So if you want it to be healing, well, that'll be one thing. If you want it to have another effect, it'll have this other effect. And when I first basically came up with this was back in about 1985, and I'm trying to talk to these different scientists because at the time I was really trying to work with the scientific and medical communities, and I'd be saying, hey, have you ever thought of the difficulty or the importance, shall we say, of intentionality? They'll kind of look at me and scratch their head and think, look at me like I was a fellow from another planet, which of course I am. But, nevertheless, the idea of intentionality was so alien, pardon the pun. But nowadays we have books like Dr. Joe Dispenza's Placebo Effect, or Dr. Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief, talking about how powerful the placebo effect is, how powerful our belief is, how powerful and important our intention and how we perceive something is. Does this resonate?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It's interesting. I come at it from a Reiki standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would fully agree that a lot of it is intent, along with the energy flow. I would simply add that, probably the intent, because our brains are electromagnetic anyway, is that we do change the frequency to suit whatever we have to do.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you something because it's so interesting. I have to share this. And I think that our brains definitely operate, but I don't know that thoughts and intentions electromagnetic, and I'll tell you why. Okay, you ready for this one?
Go for it.
I have a pretty good friend who's a scientist over in England by the name of Dr. John Reed. And he has lately, he's one of the great cymatic investigators. Cymatics is it's a Greek word which means waveform, and if you Google it, you'll see all these incredible images that happen when sound, when inorganic matter or liquids or plastics or water is exposed to different frequencies. It takes on different shapes. And he's invented something called the CymaScope, and it's way cool. So if you Google CymaScope, CYMA scope, COPE, you'll see some amazing images created by John Reed and other people. But lately, John has been doing experiments with blood, and he's been exposing blood to different sounds to see if it affects it. And I will say that one of the first ones that he did is a recording that I did called Reiki Chants, and he had phenomenal results with that one. But I'm going to tell you about the most recent thing that he did on Earth Day. He had this blood, and it's blood in a test tube, okay? And he had one in a plate in a little box with a speaker and with people making sound. They were making sound, and they were projecting love and intentionality to the blood, believe it or not. But he also had another blood sample in a Faraday cage. Now, before that, when he had done this same experiment, he did not have people focus on the blood in the Faraday cage, so that the blood in the Faraday cage basically corrupted and died. But with this experiment, number one, the blood that was exposed to the music, the sound, the chanting that people were doing, they're doing a heartfelt, loving Om, it became rejuvenated. But the amazing thing was that the blood that was in the Faraday cage also became rejuvenated, not as much as the ones that were exposed to the sound and the intention, but still significant. And the first thing he said, and he did this live on the internet, it was crazy. He said, this shows that thought and intention is not electromagnetic. I love it because it was shielded by the Faraday cage. So this is way cool. I'm sure you're aware of the work of Masaru Emoto and his water crystals, where he would take water and then expose it to different things, different thoughts, different music, etc. Are you aware of that, his water crystal experiments?
Right.
I was actually just thinking about that, but I didn't think to bring it up because it was about words on the bottle as opposed to sonic vibrations.
Same thing, though. And I have to tell you that actually a recording of mine called Holy Harmony was done as one of their experiments, and it had amazing, stuff occurred. So I will say that that's really, really cool. But I think that John Reed's work, and I told him this, I said, John, I think that this very simple experiment with blood is going to prove to be as profound as anything. It's just something people have not looked at before. And it's not done through he's actually done it in conjunction with Rutgers University, but it's not being funded by some big corporation. And it's so cool. The idea that music music and intention can rejuvenate the blood. And he's going to publish a paper on this stuff. I mean, how cool is that?
Wow. And I got a question that I guess if you are doing this, the intent is you should be able to heal different things, like maybe diabetes or cancer or different things like that. My question is, if a person is deaf and or dumb also, they can't do the hum, and
why not?
Well, they can only do it in their head if they're dumb. dumb, they can't speak.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
unless they can make a
still have
sound. If they can make a sound, yeah, they could do something, I'm sure. But
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
your
sorry.
question,
Yeah, totally. Sorry.
how can they, I guess, hear it if they're trying to hum to get the effect?
Okay.
It's a great question.
It's a great question, and the vibration that they would feel. I know that through bone conduction
right.
is one of the ways. Our skin is a conductor of sound, and so oftentimes people who are deaf will be able to feel the vibrations of a sound, maybe, ones that they may be able to, I don't know if they can make them or not, if they're, not able to speak, but, if they hear an instrument.
They can feel through their feet or their fingers or, whatnot. So there are three ways that we hear. Air conduction, which is through the ears, skin conduction,
and bone conduction. And so those three ways can open up avenues for people who are, in fact, deaf.
Right.
And who also are not able to speak because they can see, perhaps, hopefully, and, they can, hold the instrument, they can hold the drum, they can make it do whatever it's going to do. And because of the ways that we are able to assimilate vibration, i.e. bone, skin, etc., they will be able to have some effect on this particular type of person. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I wanted to suggest that just the idea of healing all these truly chronic and oftentimes, I don't know what the word is, mortal diseases. I think that's very, very possible. But at the same time, it's a really interesting phenomenon in terms of why stuff works sometimes and other times not.
And what I'm going to say, if we, we can look at these major diseases, these major illnesses, and, a variety of modalities, whether, frequencies or pharmaceuticals or whatever.
Or nutrition.
There's so many different things. However, I am going to go to something very, very simple. The other day, I had a really bad headache, and with my intention, my thoughts, my intention, and my sound, I visualized my hum going into that part of my brain, that part of my head where I was experiencing the pain, and I hummed for several minutes, took a break, hummed again, and my headache began to dissipate. And so I guess I want to let our listeners know that through our own self-created sounds, we can do, we can heal these everyday maladies that come into our lives and that are caused by stress, etc. We can heal those through our intention coupled with our sound.
Wow.
Totally makes sense.
Yep.
So I have one final question here for you, and that is, what about the absence of sound? You mentioned John Lilly and Altered States, and in the movie they used a sensory deprivation tank.
I remember the movie.
So I'm wondering, what about the sound that the human body makes, and is it important for us just to sit still in a very quiet place and listen to our own sound?
Well, you got to part 3 of what we call conscious humming, believe it or not. Because the first part is simply to begin to take some nice deep breaths, slow, deep breaths, okay? It's always really good. Taking nice, slow, deep breaths is going to be therapeutic for everyone. Everyone needs to stop and take a nice, deep breath. Then we say, okay, close your eyes and make, hum on a particular tone that feels comfortable for 5 minutes, if you can, or even 3 minutes. It'll change your life. Literally, most people have never had that experience. Maybe we'll have a chance to try it now, and maybe not. But and then the third part, though, is to be in a state of silence. There are 2 reasons for this. First, because it is in the state of, first actually, if you've been humming for 5 minutes, the different neurochemicals and stuff like that will have been released will be perhaps so powerful that you might be blissed out and you might try to stand up and basically get dizzy. But also, it is in the silence that the true shift and change through sound occurs.
And it is in that silence. And I loved this question because I think being in silence is something that is not supported in our culture. And I think it is so important because when we are in that place of silence and we are listening within, that is where our inner wisdom is able to speak. And I think that silence, and in fact, silent and listen happen to be an anagram. They have the exact same letters in each word. And so when we are silent, we are able to listen. And I love that frame because I feel that silence is such a healing way, a healing aspect of being human that doesn't get a lot of press. And when we're working with sound, we always make sure that people understand that after they've made sound, whether they've hummed or toned how forever long, but then to also be in silence and allow the shift and changes to occur, but to allow yourself to just be present in that moment of silence.
I love it. But our time is really running out, but we need to give you both a chance to put your website out there and how people can contact you, because this is a very important conversation people should be having.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having us on tonight. We've really, really enjoyed it. And people can get in touch with us. Our website, it's very easy. It is Healing Sounds, and sounds has an S at the end. It's plural, healingsounds.com. And we have so much information on our website. We have a lot of educational material.
Free downloads, all sorts of stuff. It's a great website. It's an award-winning website, and it's designed to assist people who want to explore the wonderful world of sound healing.
We have lots of sound healing tools, all of our books, all of it.
Tuning forks.
Yes.
Healingsounds.com.
Yeah.
It's a great place.
Oh.
Come visit.
And thank you for letting us share with your audience and with you guys.
Totally.
Tonight. It's always our joy to be able to talk about sound on so many different levels, and we've been able to do that tonight very beautifully.
Totally.
All right. We appreciate it, and we want you to stay on for a few minutes after we get off, which will be about another minute and a half. and we'll talk with you and thank you again off the air. So just stay loose, and we will talk with you again in just a minute. Jeff, I guess our time is just about done. So you guys got anything real quick, like? Who we got?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that the Paranormal View now has a YouTube channel, which essentially starts back when when the lockdowns started. And so, yeah, if you go to YouTube and look up the Paranormal View, it may be a little tricky to find at first, but if you just put in any recent guests' names with the Paranormal View, it should bring up the video. You can go to that video and subscribe right from that page, and click on where it says Paranormal View, and it'll bring up the videos. And yeah, and now we're able to do. When I first started it, I could only do 15-minute chunks at a time, so I would get 8 segments. Now it's letting me do entire shows, and with the midpoint taken out, it's about an hour and 50 minutes each video.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you next week. We have Elaine Kuzmeskis will be on, and always great listening to her. So with that, this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gold.
And Barbara Duncan.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.